pay through their cities, through their counties, were approved and the federal money was not there.
And we'll leave this briefing at this point. It does continue online at our website, cspan.org, as we go to a live picture of the U.S. Capitol and flags flying at half-staff in honor of the victims of the tornado yesterday in Oklahoma. They'll remain at half-staff until sunset to Wednesday, May 22nd. The Senate now returning from their weekly party lunches for more debate on a 5-year reauthorization of farm programs. Senators will spend the rest of the week debating the measure. And live coverage of the U.S. Senate.
Madam President,
Senator from Vermont.
I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
The Senate is not in a quorum call.
In that case, I do not ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
The Senator from Vermont.
Madam President, I move to set aside the pending amendment.
Can you hold off until the manager is here?
Yeah. Okay. I will hold off. I would like to ask that the pending amendments be considered, but I will hold off until the manager is here. Madam President, the amendments that I am going to offer address an enormously important national issue and an issue even more important to rural America, and that is the skyrocketing cost of gasoline at the pump and oil in general, which is causing enormous hardship for the American consumer, small businesses, truckers, airlines, and fuel dealers. I mean, the bottom line is that in Vermont, all over this country, People are paying an arm and a leg for a gallon of gas, for home heating oil. It is a very, very serious economic problem for the individual consumer and for the entire economy at large. In fact, as we continue to struggle to get out of this terrible recession, high oil and gas prices are enormously detrimental to the entire economic recovery process. These rapidly increasing prices are particularly harmful to rural America, where working people often are forced to travel 50, 100 miles to their jobs and back. And if you're paying $3.80 for a gallon of gas, that adds up. That is money just coming right out of your wallet. Madam President, over the last 5 months, the national average price for a gallon of gasoline has gone up by more than 41 cents at the pump, even, and this is the important point to make, even as U.S. oil inventories reached a 3-decade high, and demand for gasoline is lower than it was 4 years ago when prices averaged less than $2.30 a gallon. In other words, what we learned in elementary school about supply and demand, the foundation of capitalism, if you like, and pricing, is there is a lot of supply and limited demand, prices should go down. Right now, there is a lot of supply, less demand, and prices are going up. And I think we need an answer to that question, which impacts our entire economy and millions of consumers. Our goal must be, Madam President, to do everything that we can to make sure that oil and gas prices are transparent and free from fraud, manipulation, abuse, and excessive speculation. Let the principles of supply and demand work. Let us eliminate fraud, manipulation, abuse, and excessive speculation, which is exactly what we are experiencing right now. And, Madam President, that is why I will be offering 2 important amendments that deal with these issues. And both of these amendments are within the jurisdiction of the Agricultural Committee, which is obviously why I am offering them on this bill. The first amendment, number 963, requires the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, and the Oil and Gas Price Fraud Working Group to conduct a 6-month investigation to determine whether any company or individual in the United States has manipulated the price of gasoline, crude oil, heating oil, diesel fuel, or jet fuel. Madam President, such an investigation is already taking place by regulators in Europe. On May 14, 2013, just a week ago, the European Commission announced that it was investigating allegations that several companies, including BP, Shell, and Statoil, quote, may have colluded in reporting distorted prices to a price reporting agency to manipulate the published prices for a number of oil and biofuel products, end of quote. And I know that Ron Wyden, chairman of the Energy Committee, is also looking at this issue, perhaps from a slightly different way, and I applaud him for doing that. But this amendment basically says that right now the European Commission believes that there may be fraud among the major oil companies. And I believe that if that is true in Europe, it may well be true in the United States, and I want the CFTC to investigate that as well. Amendment 963 requires the CFTC to work with European regulators to determine if any company or individual in the United States provided inaccurate information to a price reporting agency for the purpose of manipulating the published prices of gasoline or oil. Secondly, refer any illegal activities to the proper authorities for prosecution. Third, report its findings within 6 months. And lastly, publish recommendations on its website on how to make sure the pricing of gasoline, crude oil, heating oil, diesel fuel, and jet fuel becomes more transparent, open, and free from manipulation, fraud, or abuse, or excessive speculation. Madam President, the third largest oil company in Europe has estimated that as much as 80% of all crude oil product transactions are linked to process published by Platts, a private price reporting agency, while just 20% are linked to trades on the New York Mercantile Exchange or ICE Futures Europe. In order to calculate prices, Platts depends on oil companies and Wall Street speculators to voluntarily provide details on bids, offers, and transactions for various crude oil and petroleum companies. So, Madam President, that is one of the issues that we want to take a hard look at, and that is to make sure that we end those manipulations. Madam President, the other issue that I want to take a hard look at is the issue of speculation on the oil futures market. And what we know is that right now, according to the CFTC, approximately 80% of the oil futures market is controlled not by end users, not by fuel dealers, not by airline companies, not by people who actually use fuel, but by Wall Street speculators. And that is the issue that my second amendment deals with. And what this amendment does is address an issue that was not satisfactorily addressed in Dodd-Frank, where we attempted to deal with the issue of excessive speculation on the oil futures market. And what my second amendment, number 964, does, it requires the CFTC to use all of its authority, including its emergency powers, within 30 days to address this very, very important issue. And once again, Madam President, I think the American people are at their wits' end in trying to understand why oil prices go up despite the fact that we have sufficient supply and lack of demand. And I believe, and I'm not just speaking for myself, but many economists believe that a heck of a lot, one of the major reasons for this significantly high price has to do with speculation from Wall Street. And what this amendment does is require the CFTC to use all of its authority, again, including its emergency power, and that is not what we have done in the past, within 30 days to do the following: to implement position limits to eliminate, prevent, or diminish excessive oil speculation as required by the Dodd-Frank Act, and to immediately curb excessive oil speculation to ensure that oil and gas prices are based on the fundamentals of supply and demand. Madam President, as I mentioned earlier, price is supposed to be determined by the amount of supply and the amount of demand. Supply now is very high. Demand is relatively low. We should be seeing a decline in oil prices rather than an increase. Further, the International Energy Agency recently projected that the global supply of oil will surge by 8.4 million barrels a day over the next 5 years, significantly faster than demand, and nearly two-thirds of the increase in oil supply will be in North America. So if you're looking at an abundance of supply, limited demand, we have every reason in the world to believe that gas prices at the pump, oil prices in general, should go down. And if they are not going down, we have got to ask why, and many of us believe this has to do with excessive Wall Street speculation on the oil futures market. While we cannot ignore the fact that big oil companies have been gouging consumers at the pump for years and have made over $1 trillion in profit over the past decade, there is mounting evidence that high gasoline prices have less to do with supply and demand and more to do with Wall Street speculation jacking up oil and gas prices in the energy futures market. 10 years ago, and this is a very important point for people to understand, 10 years ago, speculators only is probably the wrong word, but they controlled about 30 to 40% of the oil futures market. Today, Wall Street speculators control at least 80% of the market. So in a 10-year period, we have seen Wall Street speculation double on the energy futures market. What does this mean in terms of oil prices? Everything in the world. The function of Wall Street speculation has nothing to do with using oil, everything to do with making a profit, driving prices higher. This is not just Bernie Sanders talking, Madam President. There is now a growing consensus that excessive speculation on the oil futures market is driving oil prices up. ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs, the IMF, the St. Louis Federal Reserve, the American Trucking Association, Delta Airlines, the Petroleum Marketers Association of America, the New England Fuel Institute, many, many other groups, Consumer Federation of America, have all agreed that excessive oil speculation significantly increases oil and gas prices. Interestingly enough, Goldman Sachs, not one of my favorite institutions, but perhaps the largest speculator on Wall Street, came out with a report indicating that excessive oil speculation is costing Americans 56 cents a gallon at the pump. Goldman Sachs, speculator, they themselves estimating that excessive speculation is costing 56 cents a gallon at the pump for the average consumer, and that may be a conservative estimate. A few years ago, the CEO of ExxonMobil, again, not one of my favorite companies, testified at a Senate hearing that excessive speculation contributed as much as 40% to a barrel of oil. And Saudi Arabia, the largest exporter of oil in the world, told the Bush administration back in 2008, during the last major spike in oil prices, that speculation was responsible for about $40 a barrel of oil. Gary Gensler, the chairman of the CFTC, has stated publicly that oil speculators now control between 80 to 87% of the energy futures market, a figure that has more than doubled over the past decade. In other words, the vast majority of oil on the futures market is not controlled by people who actually use the product, but people whose only function in life in being in the oil futures market is to make as much quick profit as they possibly can. Let me give you just a few of the just a few of the oil speculators and how much oil they were trading on June 30th, 2008, when the price of oil was over $140 a barrel and gas prices were over $4 a gallon. Goldman Sachs bought and sold over 863 million barrels of oil. Morgan Stanley bought and sold over 632 million barrels of oil. Bank of America bought and sold over 112 million barrels of oil. Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, et cetera, et cetera. So what we have got to understand is that to a very significant degree, pricing of oil has nothing to do with supply and demand, nothing to do with end users who actually use the product, everything to do with Wall Street speculation. Sadly, Madam President, the spike in oil and gasoline prices was totally avoidable. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act required the Commodities Future Trading Commission to impose strict limits on the amount of oil that Wall Street speculators could trade in the energy futures market by January 17, 2011, 2.5 years ago. Unfortunately, the CFTC has been unable to implement position limits due to opposition on Wall Street and by a ruling of the D.C. District Court, which is now under appeal. This amendment directs the CFTC to utilize all its authority, including its emergency powers, to curb excessive oil speculation within 30 days. Within 30 days. We're not going to drag this on for another 5 years. Madam President, the emergency directive in this amendment is virtually identical to bipartisan legislation that overwhelmingly passed the House of Representatives by a vote of 402 to 19 during a similar crisis in 2008. So, Madam President, let me conclude by saying that millions of consumers are hurting as a result of excessive speculation. People are paying much more than they should at the pump for gasoline. This issue impacts our entire economy, and it's time that we did something to that. And I would say to my colleagues that I want to call up Senate Amendments 963 and 964 and ask for their immediate consideration.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object, Madam President.
Senator from Michigan.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank the Senator for Vermont for raising all of these issues that are so important for the American people. At this point in time, we do have an amendment that is pending, Senator Gillibrand's amendment. We do not have unanimous consent in order to set that aside, so I would have to, at the moment, object to setting it aside, but then I assure the Senator I want to have an opportunity to talk with him about these issues.
I look forward to talking to the Senator from Michigan, but I do want her to know this is an enormously important amendment for the people of Vermont and rural America. We want action, and I think we have brought forth amendments which can, in fact, end up substantially lowering the price of gas at the pump and oil, and I intend to pursue this vigorously.
Thank you very much.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
Senator from North Dakota.
Madam President, I rise to speak on the Farm Bill.
The senator is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Today I rise to speak in support of the Agricultural Reform, Food and Jobs Act of 2013, a 5-year Farm Bill. This bill saves more than $24 billion to help reduce our deficit and our debt. It streamlines the farm programs to make them more efficient, and it ensures that our farmers and ranchers continue to have good risk management tools, particularly crop insurance. Now, it's vitally important to so many facets of our national interest. It's important to food, of course, but also to fuel, to fiber, to rural development, to ag research, and many, many other areas. It touches the life of every single American, and in some of the most basic ways. This year, the Farm Bill is moving through this Senate because we've already debated and passed more than 90% of this bill in the last session. A lot of this bill we worked on very hard in the last session. We passed through this body with a big bipartisan vote. Unfortunately, the House was not able to pass their version, so we weren't able to go to conference and finish the job. This year we need to do that. And so this Farm Bill, again, 90% plus we voted on in this body last session. We had a big bipartisan vote to pass it. We need to do that again. We need to get into conference with the House. We need to get this done for our farmers and ranchers and for the benefit of all Americans. Last week we passed the bill out of the Senate Ag Committee, on which I serve, where I had the opportunity to both help craft it. And again, building on the product that we put together last year, we voted it out of committee with a big bipartisan vote. Now, the U.S. House also passed its version of a farm bill out of their Ag Committee last week, and they're looking to bring their bill to the floor, to the House floor, in June. And we're hopeful that they'll pass it in June, but we need to be ready. We need to have ours done. I think we can show real leadership on this issue and be ready to get into conference with the House and get this important work done. The Senate version that we passed supports our farmers and ranchers in substantive and sensible ways. It gives them the necessary risk management tools and ensures that Americans, all Americans, continue to enjoy the highest quality, lowest cost food supply, not just in the world, but in the history of the world. Among the provisions in the commodity title is the no-cost sugar program. And I want to take just a few minutes here to talk about the sugar program and its importance in the context of this farm bill. Now, the sugar program warrants discussion because some members, and I believe certainly with the best of intentions, want to actually weaken this vitally important program. But weakening our current sugar policy would accomplish nothing. In fact, it would subject our producers, consumers, and industries to a distorted world market. Further, it would threaten the more than 140,000 jobs in 22 states that depend on a vibrant, competitive sugar industry. No, the world sugar market is not a free market. Make no mistake, it is not a free market in any conventional sense of the term. I can tell you now foreign governments heavily protect and subsidize their sugar producers. For example, Brazil spends between $2 and $3 billion per year to subsidize its producers. Mexico literally owns 1/5 of its industry and subsidizes the rest. Our sugar farmers, along with the rest of America's farmers and ranchers, have told foreign competitors time and again, we are ready, willing, and able to compete in a truly free market. But we will not and we must not unilaterally disarm. Nor will dismantling the sugar program result in lower costs to consumers and American businesses. Once you factor in transportation costs, the world price of sugar is higher than the price in the United States. And sugar prices are not only higher in Brazil and Mexico, they are higher worldwide. If we do away with sugar policy altogether and subject producers strictly to a distorted global market, what we will see is not lower prices, but rather extreme volatility in the global sugar market. And not only are sugar prices lower in the United States and elsewhere, but the cost of sugar in most products is tiny. For example, in a Hershey's chocolate bar, it's less than 2% of the cost. Further, it should be noted that sugar prices have fallen by more than 50% in the last 2 years. But candy prices at the store aren't seeing the same level of reduction at all. The truth is, if consumers are paying higher costs, it's because of labor and health care costs in the United States, not because of the cost of sugar. For 10 years now, sugar policy has operated at zero cost to the American taxpayer because our farmers are efficient and they are competitive, and because American sugar policy has always made sure that they were playing on a level playing field. As a result, consumers in this country enjoy more affordable sugar than elsewhere in the world, and consumers enjoy products that are made from a safe and reliable homegrown source. The bottom line is that sugar policy is cost-effective and fair, and it should be retained in the commodity title of the Farm Bill. But I'd like to turn again to the broader legislation. Good farm policy benefits every single American. As I said, we have the lowest cost, highest quality food supply in the world thanks to our farmers and ranchers, and thanks to good farm policy. How do you put a value on our safe, abundant, nutritious, dependable food supply? It's invaluable. By any standard, it's invaluable. Just consider the benefits that this Farm Bill provides. The Farm Bill is a job creator and it helps our economy. Agriculture supports 16 million jobs in the United States and contributes billions of dollars to the national economy. Year in and year out, we sell more food and fiber than we buy from abroad. Further, American agriculture produces a financial surplus. Through relentless innovation, best practices, and good stewardship of the land, American agriculture creates a positive balance of trade. The The Farm Bill saves money to help reduce the deficit and the debt. Think how important that is. The 2013 Farm Bill, like the Farm Bill we passed last year, provides more than $24 billion in savings, more than what is required by sequestration, to help address the nation's deficit and debt. Our farmers and ranchers are stepping up and doing their part. The Farm Bill also provides a strong market-based safety net for producers. The safety net in the 2013 Farm Bill focuses on enhanced crop insurance, which is what farmers and ranchers have asked for, enhanced crop insurance. That's the focus. Not direct payments. Direct payments are eliminated. And it enhances crop insurance with the inclusion of a new product, the Supplemental Coverage Option, SCO. The SCO enables producers to purchase a supplemental policy beyond their individual farm-based policy, creating an additional level of risk management. The bill also includes the Ag Risk Coverage, or ARC program, that provides assistance for shallow loss or multiple year losses, again helping our farmers to better manage risk. They're business people. They need to manage their risk. And let's not forget the Farm Bill strengthens our national security. Our country doesn't have to depend for our food supply on other countries, countries that don't necessarily share our interests or values. And that makes us safer. The fact is, we are secure in that most basic, vital necessity, our food supply. Mr. President, the Farm Bill is about so many things important to the people of America. This is about all Americans. Again, I say, good farm policy benefits every single American. We have the highest quality, lowest cost food supply in the world, thanks to our farmers and our ranchers and good farm policy. This is about 16 million jobs in this country that are supported by agriculture. This is about a positive balance of trade that helps build our economy. This is about $24 billion in savings, where ag is stepping up and not only doing its share, but doing more than its share to help with the deficit and the debt. In the most fundamental ways, a good farm bill makes America stronger, safer, and more secure. And, Madam President, we need to pass it. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Mississippi.
Madam President, I'm pleased to congratulate my friend from North Dakota for his statement and his discussion of the content of this farm bill. He was one of the active members of our committee who participated in the markup sessions, attended the hearings in preparation for writing a farm bill and helping to shape the consensus that is reflected in the final work product. He is a very valuable member of our committee, and I commend him and thank him for his contributions to this process. He very accurately describes that this is a consensus product. It's not a partisan bill. It's not meant to make anybody or any section or any commodity group look good or feel good because of favors done in this bill, but this is truly to serve the interests of our good and great country, to help improve our trading opportunities in agriculture commodities that are produced on our farms throughout the United States. And I think it's going to serve the interests of not only agriculture but the American citizen, broadly speaking, and much of the success is due to the contributions made by the senator from North Dakota.
Madam President.
Senator from North Dakota.
I'd like to thank the distinguished senator from Mississippi for his kind comments and also for his leadership on the Ag Committee as our ranking member. I want to express my appreciation with that. Again, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from North Dakota.
It should come as no surprise that two senators from the great state of North Dakota stand today and talk about the importance of American agriculture. 90% of the land that we have in North Dakota is engaged in production agriculture. And as much as what you've heard, and it's all true, about this great economic renaissance that we're having in our state, let me tell you, agriculture is still number one. And every year, American farmers, North Dakota farmers, bet. They bet on good weather, they bet on good prices, they bet that the crop will grow, and they spend millions of dollars on that bet. They are the biggest gamblers in the history of the world, and they're asking for a farm bill that gives them a little bit of risk help, that makes sure that when they plant, they know that maybe they have a chance to get cost of production back out. And why is that important? It's important because who's going to take that risk on behalf of the American people, on behalf of a global and worldwide supply of food? Who's going to take that risk if we don't help a little bit? And let me tell you, today in America, almost every state that has an agricultural base is doing a little bit better because agriculture's led the way. Agriculture has buoyed this economy. States with an agriculture base have a much lower rate of unemployment, and they have been leading the way on our trade deficit. It cannot be overstated how significant this farm bill is not only to states like North Dakota, but to every state in this union, to every economy in this union. 16 million jobs hang in the balance, waiting for this body, the United States Congress, to give some assurance to pass the farm bill. Now, I applaud both the ranking member and the committee chair for their excellent, excellent work. No bill comes out of committee with diverse opinions that is absolutely perfect and everyone's going to agree on. But it is part of that great American compromise that we've been talking about, that we've been striving for in this body, to actually move the issues forward, to do the things that Americans sent us here to do, to deliberate, to discuss, to debate, and to compromise. And that's what this bill is. Now, every piece of this bill is important. Every piece is the linchpin to making sure that we pass a farm bill. And so you're going to hear a lot in the next couple days about the sugar program. And I will talk broadly about the other provisions of the bill tomorrow on this floor. But I want to spend today talking a little bit about the sugar program within the Farm Bill, because it is absolutely significant and important. And I know Senator Hoeven just outlined some of the statistics that we talk about when we talk about sugar. But the U.S. sugar policy defends more than 142,000 jobs, not just in North Dakota, not just in Minnesota, not in Florida and Hawaii, but in 22 states. And it defends those jobs from unfair foreign competition. And it results in nearly $20 billion in annual economic activity in the United States. Of course, many of these jobs are in North Dakota. We grow a lot of sugar beets in the Red River Valley. We process a lot of sugar beets in the Red River Valley, and those processing jobs are the value-added jobs that led the way in value-added economies in our state. And so we're pretty protective of our sugar economy. In many rural communities, sugar is the linchpin of the local economy. If we lose the sugar program, make no mistake, if we bend to the reforms that you're going to hear talked about, if we bend to the ideas that you have today about the sugar program, we will lose our domestic sugar industry. Why? Because we can't compete. Make no mistake, I'm not saying that our producers can't produce or compete with producers from other parts of the world if the playing field is level. In fact, not only can we compete, we can best them. But the playing field is not level in sugar. Other countries have subsidized their sugar programs for years. More than 120 countries actually produce sugar. Every one of them intervened to defend their producers from global prices where surplus sugar is dumped. None could survive at historic world-level prices without these government interventions. If our farmers could go head-to-head with their foreign counterparts, they would robustly compete and, I believe, capture much of the market. Unfortunately, with federal subsidization and protections in place, a fair fight's not available to our American sugar beet and cane growers. Opponents of the sugar program would have us do one thing: unilaterally disarm and surrender our market to foreign producers. For over 2 decades, from 1989 to 2008, and I want you to remember that date, 2008, the average world cost of sugar production averaged about 51% more than the world price. Let me say that again. The world average cost of sugar production averaged 51% more than the sugar price. How do you do that? How do you produce a product that costs more than what you sell it for? You're subsidized. This means that sugar producers have received support from governments that allow them to stay in business even when their production costs exceed the market price. In order for their sugar industries to survive, governments in foreign countries provide some buffer to the world market. With a wide variety of import tariffs, non-tariff import barriers, price and income supports, and direct and indirect subsidies. You know, we have heard that sugar prices are too high, and if we eliminate the sugar program, the risk program for our sugar growers, that sugar prices would drop. Food Corporation opponents say that the U.S. sugar price is too high. They further argue that high sugar prices threaten their competitiveness given foreign competition for processed foods. You know, the truth is that sugar prices have held relatively stable over the course of the last 3 decades. This cannot be said about most other agricultural commodities. Imagine today if we were debating about $2 a bushel corn. U.S. raw sugar prices have dropped by more than half since the fall of 2011. Prices now are below the average price of the 1980s and below the average of the 1990s and below the average of the decade of 2000. Our sugar farmers have struggled for decades and may not have survived. Since 1985, more than half of the sugar beet and sugar cane operations shut down. It's hard to survive in 2013 when the price you get for your product is the same price you would have received in 1980. The amendment that we're going to be debating here will drive the U.S. sugar price down even further, allowing more subsidized sugar to flow into our market and put our sugar farmers out of business. You know, if we take a look at all of the commodities that are in the Farm Bill, and we take a look at every piece of that compromise bill, and we start singling out one commodity for special treatment. Let's forget for a minute we're talking about sugar. Let's talk about dairy. Would a sugar bill survive if we were to eliminate the dairy program? Would a farm bill survive if we were to eliminate the dairy program? Our concern today is that this industry is critical to our food security in this country, but also importantly, it is critical to the compromise of the farm bill itself. A farm bill that supports over 16 million jobs in an economy that struggles except on the farm. These programs have worked. And I can tell you, in North Dakota, I've lived through bad farm bills. My producers have lived through bad farm bills. The last 5 years, 6 years, have been an enormous improvement, not only to market-driven techniques, but have been an enormous improvement to allowing our producers to make the market decisions that they're going to make, but also get that help that's going to give them the surety when a small North Dakota producer, and I'm not exaggerating, spends $1 million putting a crop in the ground. And they do that for their family, they do that for their state, but they also do it for the country and for the world, because they know that the American farmer feeds the world, and it's a pretty important job. And so I say, let the compromise stay. Let the bill stay intact. Let's move this bill forward. Let's get it into conference with the House. And let's, for once, tell the American people that we can get something done in the United States Congress, that we could respond to the needs of this country and move our country forward. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Mississippi.
Mr. President, we appreciate the comments of the distinguished senator from North Dakota. Also, it's a pleasure to welcome her as a new member of our committee. She took an active part in the development of this bill, and we appreciate her contributions. I see no other senators seeking recognition at this time. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
A quorum call underway on the floor of the U.S. Senate this afternoon. The Senate considering amendments to a 5-year reauthorization of the Farm Bill. Senators will likely spend the rest of this week debating the measure as they head into the Memorial Day weekend break. No votes are scheduled for this afternoon on the Farm Bill. While the quorum call is underway, we'll show you some of the debate from earlier today when the Senate Judiciary Committee met to continue their markup of immigration legislation.
Secondly, the senator from Arizona made a point about having an opportunity to become a citizen. And I think anyone can have an opportunity to become a citizen if they come here legally. And one of the ways to ensure that is by expanding and improving legal immigration, creating legal avenues for those who want to seek the American dream to come here. I'm the son of an immigrant who came penniless at age 18, not speaking English and seeking the American dream. And that is our legacy as a country. And I would note that this committee voted down my amendment to increase high-skilled legal immigrants. And I think we should be more welcoming of legal immigrants to allow those who want to come here to work hard, to create jobs, to make our economy stronger, to do so. But third, my friend from New York, in responding, had a statement that I thought was very interesting, and I wrote it down. He said, if we don't have a path to citizenship, there is no reform. And I don't disagree that that has been, to date, the position of the proponents of this bill. I don't agree with that position. And I would suggest to the millions who want to see our immigration reform fixed, that position should be very troubling. Because what that position is saying is that if the votes are not present in Congress for a path to citizenship, that the Senate is prepared to say, we will do nothing to secure the borders, we will do nothing to improve high-skilled immigration, we will do nothing to increase legal immigration, and we will do nothing to bring the 11 million who are living in the shadows out of the shadows. Now, I would suggest to all of those who passionately want to see this program fixed that saying it's all or nothing, if there's no path to citizenship, quote, there is no reform, tying immigration reform hostage to a path to citizenship is not a strategy to pass a bill. It's a strategy to create partisan division. It's a strategy that may well result in more political battles, but it's not a strategy to fix the problem. And so I would urge everyone in this committee to roll up our sleeves and fix the problem in a humane way that secures the border, gets serious about fixing that problem, that expands and improves legal immigration, and that does not unfairly treat legal immigrants by removing a path to citizenship, but allowing, as this legislation does, a legal status for those who are here illegally. That would be reform that a great many people across this country, both Republican and Democrat, would embrace, and I would urge the committee to consider the amendment.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Schumer. Mr. Durden. Mr. Whitehouse.
No, by proxy.
Ms. Klobuchar. No. Mr. Franklin. Mr. Cruz.
No.
Mr. Blumenthal.
No.
Ms. Rono.
No.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Hatch.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sessions.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Flake.
No.
Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, the votes are 5 yeas, 13 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. Senator Cruz, you have, Senator Hatch is still not here. You have Cruz 2, and then we'll go to Flake 3 and Flake 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call up Cruz 2, which is an amendment that would prohibit those who are here illegally from being eligible for means-tested benefits, federal, state, or local. And in addition, would exclude those individuals from being eligible for Obamacare. As we have just been discussed, I am a proponent of expanded legal immigration. I think it is one of the great strengths of our nation that we welcome people from around the world coming to seek a better life and coming to seek the American dream. And yet, one of the greatest challenges to being welcoming with immigrants is our ever-expanding welfare state. Indeed, in a striking exchange that I would encourage people to Google and watch, Milton Friedman, the late economist, discussed the fact that prior to 1914, the United States had no limits on legal immigration, that we opened our doors to any who wanted to come throughout the country. And that was a state of affairs that was widely acceptable and positive for our country. Obviously, since 1914, we have had caps, and what Milton Friedman asked then is what changed? And he pointed out, and Milton Friedman was a vocal advocate of expanded immigration, he pointed out that what changed is we started to see the expansion of the ever-growing welfare state. And right now, our country spends roughly $1 trillion in federal and state means-tested welfare plans. There are approximately 7 billion people in the world. We don't have the resources to redistribute from hardworking American taxpayers welfare benefits to the many people throughout the world who are struggling. This bill would address that issue. The current Gang of Eight bill excludes federal welfare benefits, but it does not exclude state and local benefits, which means the instant this bill were passed, if it were passed, the roughly 11 million people who are here illegally would suddenly be eligible for billions, if not tens of billions of dollars in state and local means-tested welfare payments. Beyond that, this bill also allows for all of those who are here illegally to be eligible for means-tested welfare payments after they transition to LPR status. This provision instead would say that those who are here illegally shall not be eligible for state welfare payments, that we're going to protect the hardworking taxpayer. And I would note, one of the things that I think we want to do to continue to remain a strong economy going forward is welcome those from throughout the world who will come and work hard to stand on their own feet, to achieve the American dream, to provide for their family. And if we have a system where people are coming here not to be eligible for government welfare, but instead to have a chance at the American dream, that makes us stronger. And so I would urge the committee to adopt this amendment.
Senator Durbin.
Mr. Chairman, the succession of amendments from the junior senator from Texas is worth noting. The first amendment suggested to all of the undocumented living in America, whether they're dreamers or others, we don't want you. You can't be part of the future of this nation. The second amendment, having failed, the second amendment says, all right, so if you become citizens, under no circumstances will we provide any help for you. For example, if you happen to be from a working family and need assistance on a means-tested Pell Grant or need assistance when it comes to a federal loan, no. So the education of your children is not our concern. How about the health of the children? Well, if you don't have enough money to afford health insurance and you end up with some assistance from Medicaid, for example, even under Obamacare, what you're saying is the health of your children is not our concern. What kind of America are you thinking about, Senator Cruz? That we would have millions of citizens here who couldn't get a helping hand when it comes to education for their children, couldn't get a helping hand when it comes to basic medical care for their children? I don't think that's an America that we really want to live in. You're looking at a senator who got a government loan to go to college, a means-tested government loan to go to college and law school, ended up with a full-time government job, and here I sit at this table. Somebody thought in previous generations that it was worth it for my parents, who had limited education, limited income, that their son would have a chance. I hope some people, a few, think it was a worthy investment. Your amendment says we will never make that investment. You're here, but you're on your own, buddy. Don't expect this country to lean in your direction to help you through tough times, to educate your children, or to provide basic health care. That is an America which I want to be part of, and I will oppose this amendment.
Any further discussion? I wish
Mr. Chairman, I think that the senators didn't say that we don't want you, but he did basically produce language that's consistent with what the sponsors of the legislation have said, is that people should not, under this legislation, receive welfare benefits for 13 years, and he's just carrying that principle out.
Would the Senator yield for a question?
Yes.
Isn't it true, though, that once those under the 13-year process become citizens, that they will be eligible?
Under this legislation, they will, yes.
And under this amendment, they would not be?
That is correct.
Thank you.
At least that's my understanding of it.
Okay. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Chairman.
The Senator from Texas.
I'd like to say two things in conclusion.
All right, go ahead.
First of all, I think it's unfortunate that my friend from Illinois would cast aspersions in terms of my motivations and what I am saying, and in particular saying, we don't want you here. I would note that among the amendments that I've introduced are two amendments to expand legal immigration, and one of those two, every member on the Democratic side of the aisle voted against, said no, we don't want more high-skilled immigrants here, and voted not to increase high-skilled temporary workers by 500%. This is an issue that is near and dear to many of us on this committee. It is near and dear and personal to a great many of us. And the purpose of the amendments that I have introduced here are to fix the problem, to secure our borders, to improve legal immigration, and to fix the problem, which is what I think a bipartisan majority of Americans want. I think it is unfortunate that this committee was prepared to do nothing on immigration if a path to citizenship is not included, to leave the 11 million in the shadows if a path to citizenship is not included. I think that is a less than compassionate outcome. And I also think the Senator's statement that he believes that those who are here illegally should be eligible for means-tested welfare, should be eligible for all sorts of means-tested benefits, is inconsistent with the repeated statements of the proponents of this bill. The proponents of this bill have been on television frequently in the past weeks and months saying those who are here illegally would not be eligible for welfare. And yet my friend from Illinois gave an impassioned speech as to why he believed we had a moral obligation to extend welfare benefits to those who are here illegally. And I would note that if the proponents of this bill believe what is being said on television, this amendment should be adopted unanimously, because this amendment codifies what the proponents of this bill have been telling the American people, that these individuals will not be eligible for Obamacare, will not be eligible for welfare. And the fact that my friend from Illinois has such visceral disagreement with it, I think makes clear that one of the consequences of this bill, if this bill were passed, would be to put yet another burden on hardworking taxpayers that would harm our economy and ultimately would encourage yet more illegal immigration. Because if the status quo is that those who come here illegally shall be granted citizenship and given welfare benefits, then ultimately I think that is disrespecting rule of law. One of the reasons people come here is because, unlike many nations in the world, rule of law means something here. We don't simply set aside our law. And I think kicking the can down the road, not solving this problem, is inconsistent with the obligation all of us have. And I would urge the committee to adopt the amendment.
Clerk will call the roll.
No. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Whitehouse.
No.
Ms. Klobuchar. No. Mr. Franken.
No.
Mr. Coons.
No.
Mr. Blumenthal.
No.
Ms. Serrano.
No.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Hatch. Mr. Sessions.
Aye.
Mr. Brand.
Over front.
Mr. Cornyn.
Over front.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Flake.
No.
Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, the votes are 6 yeas, 12 nays.
The amendment was not agreed to. As I announced earlier, the next amendment will be by Senator Flake. I believe it's the Flake 4.
Flake 4, yes. Mr. Chairman, The underlying legislation makes clear that those granted registered provisional immigrant or RPI status are not eligible for federal means-tested benefits. This has been a concern raised. There's been a concern raised over this prohibition, and this amendment seeks to rectify that. Specifically, this amendment would ensure that anybody who has RPI status and has been convicted of fraudulently claiming or receiving federal means-tested benefits would have their status revoked. In addition, in order to provide sufficient oversight to ensure that this prohibition is being implemented correctly, this amendment directs the Secretary of Health and Human Services to conduct regular audits to ensure that RPI immigrants are not fraudulently receiving means-tested federal benefits. I think this is important. We just want to make sure that those, while they are in RPI status, they are not eligible for federal means-tested benefits. And if they're convicted of fraudulently doing this, then they revoke their status.
Call up Amendment 948.
The Senate's in a quorum call, sir.
I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendment to call up Amendment number 948.
Objection. Clerk will report.
The Senator from Kansas, Mr. Roberts, for himself and others, proposes an amendment numbered 948. On page 355.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the reading of the amendment